Thank you, Mehmet, Glenn, Deborah, and a special thank you to my mentor, David Nash. We're so happy he was able to make it here. We spent a lot of time talking about therapies and cures on the horizon, and even preventative techniques around behavior changes, like not smoking, eating better, and now avoiding Dunkin' Donuts. But we all know that there's an intimate connection between our mental health and our physical health, between stress and our well-being. The good news is that there's inexpensive tools and techniques, such as meditation, that can help us, help children, as well as adults, cope with the daily stresses, be more productive, feel more grounded, and even positively impacting our health. But there's also a lot of misconceptions about meditation. So let's watch this video to learn a little bit more.
All right, little quiz. Oprah Winfrey, Jerry Seinfeld, Rupert Murdoch, Katy Perry, and Bush twin Barbara. I mean, they're as far apart as you can get. But what do they all have in common? Meditation. While meditation is becoming more mainstream, let's get real. There are many of you who think meditation looks like this, right? You got to be in some crazy, wacky place that you never would go. Today, we're busting the biggest myths about meditation to show you why all those folks and so many more are actually using meditation. And I brought world-renowned expert Bobby Roth here. He's taught the biggest names in the world how to meditate, including the ones that I just mentioned. He taught me, he taught my whole team, he taught all of Oprah's team. That's where we got the idea from. Yet when folks hear the word meditation, as much as they may respect the people who do it, they're skeptical. You were a skeptic. What turned it around?
There's so many misunderstandings about the word meditation. You know, it just means anything. It could be jogging, running, it could be a sect, it could be anything. And now, fortunately, because of science, and that's what drew me to transcendental meditation, to learn to meditate, is science. I was anxious, I was feeling under pressure, I needed more energy, I needed to be able to focus more. I didn't want to spend my whole life taking medications. Medications have a role. And someone told me about meditation, and I thought, I'm a skeptic, you know, and they said, well, you can be skeptical, it still works. And so I tried it, I learned it, and it would change my life.
Can we bust some myths?
Sure.
Because I'm hoping with your help and a little bit of the science you talked about, we can convince people this is a big change they need to make this year. First up, the big myth that you don't have time. Who has time to meditate, to sit there and do nothing? Some people think it takes hours and hours. Does it really take that long to see the benefits?
No, the benefits, well, again, there's so many different types of meditation, but meditation properly understood and practiced is very simple to learn, and the results, according to research, should be pretty close to immediate within the first day or two.
All right, let's spend a few minutes on this. So what's the science say? It may lower your heart disease risk, #1 cause of death in America, especially in some populations, helps with blood pressure. Important. It may help with back pain. And when I speak about these things, by the way, I mean, like the American Heart Association for the first time is recommending meditation. And then there's the issue of anxiety and depression that Bobby mentioned. And here there's, again, pretty good evidence that you can make a dent. It's not that it's going to replace everything else you might try, but why not try something that you control, that's free for you, that you can use whatever it's beneficial.
It's a great adjunct. It's a tool in the toolbox, and it's an important tool in the toolbox.
Okay, next myth. It's only right for some types of people. So, you know, you got to be one of those crunchy folks. You know, granola-ish folks. Right? You've been doing this for 45 years and been busting that stereotype probably daily.
Now I'm pleased to introduce Bob Roth, CEO of the David Lynch Foundation. He'll talk to us about some data, of how meditation can affect our health. And then we'll introduce a very special guest, and it's one of the 5 people you saw at the beginning of the clip who's joined us to Unite to Cure. And they'll talk about the impact of meditation in children.
Thank you to the remarkable Robin, your eminences, all of you. It's wonderful for me to be here. When you think about what a meditation teacher would be, I'm really probably not that guy. I'm a skeptic. I'm so skeptical, my father, who was a doctor, used to tell me to lighten up, because I, by nature, skeptical person. I love science. I'm not into woo-woo or new age. I love things to be real. I'm also Jewish, and I have my faith. They're not in conflict. They support each other. I think the whole point of meditation. First of all, how many people here have tried some form of meditation? Now, how many people do that on a regular basis? Really good. I think it's so interesting because when we've been talking about healthcare and we've been talking about how to create medicine for the 21st century, a lot of what we're talking about is from the neck down. What we eat, how we exercise. Well, there's a 3-pound organ that's 2% of the body weight that we don't do much with in terms of exercise. And the whole discussion of meditation, which I should tell you, I've been teaching this, I've been practicing it for 50 years. I'm going to be 68 years old. And I almost never get sick, and I have more energy now than I've ever had in my life. But the whole discussion of meditation needs to come out of the realm of philosophy and sort of woo-woo into something very serious and scientific. And so what I want to do now is there's a fog about meditation. Nobody really knows what, someone says, oh, I meditate, and there's beautiful meditation prayers I have in my prayer book when I'm at services. And so there's an understanding that meditation is prayer. Other people say, well, I jog, that's my meditation. I listen to music, that's my meditation. Well, research has identified 3 basic types of meditation. So this is going to be a little tutorial on meditation, and then we're going to have an amazing conversation. To understand meditation, use this as an analogy. You're on a little boat, and you're sitting in the middle of the ocean. And all of a sudden, you get these giant 30, 40-foot high waves. You could feel the whole ocean is in upheaval. You're on a little boat, 30, 40-foot high waves. You could feel the whole ocean is in upheaval. But is it the whole ocean? Because if you could do a cross-section of the ocean out there, you'd realize that you may have 30-foot waves, but the ocean in reality is a mile deep. And while the nature of the ocean can be turbulent on the surface, the nature of the ocean at its depth is pretty darn silent. And I use that as an analogy for the mind. The surface of the mind, turbulent, thinking mind. I like to call it the gotta mind. I gotta do this, and I gotta do that, and I gotta call him, and I gotta call her, and I gotta make a list, and I gotta make a new list. Then I gotta find that list, and I gotta slow down, and people tell me I gotta get going, and I gotta get to sleep, and I gotta get up. Anybody? So it's a natural human desire to think, oh my gosh, I'd like to have some inner calm, some inner clarity, some inner ease, some inner wakefulness. And the operative word there is inner. And the question is there such a thing as an inner? And if so, how do we get there? And that has been the domain of meditation throughout time. And I want to say here, when I'm talking about the meditation techniques I'm talking about, not religious. They support every religion. They make us healthier. We're talking about a health technique here. So one type of meditation is called focused attention. I'll give you a little tutorial. It's a concentration form of meditation. To have a calm mind, you try and clear the mind of thoughts. You go to a class and they say, okay, stop thoughts, stop thinking. When they told me to do that, I thought, okay, then I'll create peace in the Middle East. Because I got a very active mind. Now, when we do that type of meditation, it creates something called gamma brain waves, 20 to 50 cycles per second. Particularly in the front prefrontal cortex, left side, shows we're focused, concentrating. When your child is studying, gamma brain waves. Second type is called open monitoring. And in that ocean, it's an observational tool. It's like a mindfulness practice. People here tried mindfulness? Some of you? Mindfulness. It's an observational tool. It's dispassionately observing your thoughts, your feelings, your moods. When we do that, it creates something called theta brain waves, which are about 5 to 7, 6 to 8 cycles per second. That's pre-onset dream. The third type is called self-transcending. And transcendental meditation is part of that.
And that meditation hypothesizes that deep within every human being, still on the human being level, deep within every human being is a level of the mind right now that is already calm and settled and peaceful and wide awake. It's part of my mind. Just like I can go, we have a child who can go from zero to and be overcome with rage. The mind can also settle down. And when we have that experience of that calm during transcendental meditation, it creates something called alpha-1 brainwaves and coherence spread across the whole brain. And that's a state of profound, restful alertness. At the same time, oxygen consumption decreases. There's an increase in galvanic skin resistance. There's an decrease in cortisol by 30%, an increase in serotonin. The benefits to daily life are huge. When we set it, particularly reduction in high blood pressure, risk of stroke, heart disease. When Robin asked me to do this session, I thought, okay, I'll show some charts. But what I wanted to do, particularly since I have a very dear friend joining us, I actually wanted to pivot and say, let's assume meditation works. There's some benefit. Now, what are we doing with that to address the very serious issues of physical health, mental health, and behavioral health that afflict our world, in particular children who are being consumed by stress? So I head up a foundation that's brought this meditation to 600,000 inner-city school kids in 35 countries for free. We're also working to bring it to veterans who suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, women and children who are victims of sexual assault and domestic violence. And a big focus of ours now, opioid addiction. You know, it was a horror at Parkland High School. 17 young people were killed in that assault. Did you know that 15 young people die every single day in America from opioid addiction? So we have to do something. I'd like to play this 4-minute video that gives you an overview of the work that we're doing, and then welcome to join me an absolutely wonderful woman who is having a powerfully positive influence in the world. So if we could watch this video.
This is a rough neighborhood, and it becomes a struggle for a lot of the kids. It becomes a struggle.
A lot of kids in my environment feel like they probably won't make it to their 18th birthday.
When they come from traumatized neighborhoods, a lot of times they bring those stresses here.
When I'm with my friends, I always make sure we're looking around because you never know, things happen.
They walk in the door feeling like they don't have a shot.
Every day I would get a call that there is a fight at the corner of the street, that there is a stabbing.
O índice de drogas aqui é muito grande.
If we're not able to find solutions, these children may be lost.
Quando é 8h15, bate o sinal e aí todos eles param o que estão fazendo e meditam.
A través de la meditación empezamos a ver que se están alejando de las drogas.
Hemos combatido la cuestión de las peleas, las agresiones.
पढ़ाई में भी मदद मिल रही है, जिससे आसपास में मन भटक जाता था, अब वो भी नहीं हो रहा है और अंदर के बहुत सारे रोग, बीमारियां, वो सब भी अब दूर हैं.
When our girls come in and they are just a wreck, and then they do quiet time, it's like it just smooths that out. and they walk out of the room feeling normal, feeling centered. And that's huge.
If we can get that change within each one of us, the change from within, we will change the school and we will in turn change the community.
I want to make one point very clear. This meditation should be on the same level of what we do when we eat right, when we exercise. This does not replace religion. This only enhances our health, allows us, when we're stressed, it tears apart the connections in the brain. When we settle down and access that calm within, you see this increased communication between all the different parts of the brain. You see a waking up of the prefrontal cortex, which is executive functioning. You see a calming of the amygdala, which is that reactivity center. You see a waking up of the default mode network, which is also the imagination center. And because of the neuroplasticity of the brain, all the parts of that connections we have in meditation allow us to be, those connections remain after meditation and allow us to be more the person we are. And God helps those who help themselves. So what I'd like to do now is introduce, there's so much I could say about her other than some pretty significant numbers. I think I have 13 people on my Twitter account. Katy Perry was the first person globally to surpass 100 million Twitter followers. She has sold, these numbers, 18 billion streams. She has sales of more than 40 million albums and 125 million tracks. But more than that, Katy is an active advocate of so many philanthropic causes. In 2013, Katy was appointed a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador as a result of her commitment to improving the lives of children worldwide, and further honored with the Audrey Hepburn Humanitarian Award in 2016. I taught her to meditate in 2010. She's a very dear friend. Please welcome the wonderful, wise Katy Perry.
Good morning. Hi, Bobby.
My mother calls me Bobby.
Fortuitous.
Yes. So what I wanted to do is to hear, for you to just get a chance to hear. We're getting a survey here. We're just getting an introduction to meditation and why it would be that someone who is as dynamic and has as much pressures in her life and demands on her life and desires in her life would take time out, 20 minutes, to meditate. So we're going to go right to it. Why do you meditate?
Well, great question. I meditate, just like so many of us. We are busy with our personal lives, with our careers. And for me, I'm an executive multitasker. Even before I had the opportunity of having a great career, I was driving, eating a cheeseburger, putting on my lipstick, all at the same time. I wouldn't say do that. But I have always...
To the great distress of the Los Angeles Police Department.
Yes, I've always had a lot on my plate. And I noticed before I was meditating, I started to short circuit a little bit, like an iPhone, when it just decides to stop and turn off on you, and you're like, I was in the middle of something. So I knew that I had to take care of my mental health and my mind, which is, the greatest asset in my body besides my heart. And I knew I had to protect it. And so Bobby was able to teach me meditation in India. And the stillness that I found is beyond anything I've ever experienced. It's way different than napping. Everybody's like, well, I'll just nap for 2 hours, right? And this is totally different than napping. I said to you yesterday that napping is to brushing your teeth as flossing is to meditation. A lot of people brush their teeth but still have very interesting breath. So you got to get the plaque out.
From my side, I want to say one of the reasons why I love Katy so much is not just because she's here and flew here for this, to talk about this, but because when you're talking about something like meditation, TM, we're talking something that costs really, relatively speaking, next to nothing. And we need to let people know, we need to break down some of the boundaries, the misunderstandings about this meditation and meditation in general. And there is no, with our nonprofit, huge multi-billion-dollar ad campaign, it's word of mouth. And 100 million people really trust Katy Perry. So I am very grateful to you because your words, 600,000 young kids have learned to meditate, and a lot of it because of your words, and you are saving, no exaggeration, have saved thousands and thousands of lives. So when someone says to you...
Words are very powerful.
Pardon?
God created the world with words.
Yes. When you, what do you say to someone when they say, well, this is a religion?
I mean, I've seen people wear slogans on their shirt that says, CrossFit is a religion, Anyone can make something a religion and label it. I think it's about as religious as eating good foods, as exercising for your body. I was raised in a Christian household. Both of my parents, my mother here is today, and they're both traveling ministers. So I was raised around the idea that our body is a temple. And I think if our body is truly a temple, we have to take care of it, mind, body, and soul. And this takes care of your mind. And I notice when I meditate that my whole brain kind of opens up. It feels like a halo is ignited around my head, and it's like I'm clearing out the cobwebs of my neural pathways and finding new neural pathways to ignite. And it's some of the most incredible stillness, and also I would say it brings some of the best, most creative ideas to the surface for me, especially when I come out of it. But I believe that, if it's religious to take care of your temple, then sign me up.
In Chicago 3 years ago or 2 years ago, the University of Chicago Crime Lab put out a request for proposal. They were very concerned about violence. Chicago has high violent crime rate. Children going to schools where they have to sleep in bathtubs because of the bullets that could come through the walls. And they put out a request and they said, does anybody have anything to do that we can do to reduce violence and arrests in the public schools? And 230 organizations, nonprofits, submitted proposals, and the Crime Lab accepted 3. And David Lynch Foundation was one of those 3. And in the first year, now these numbers may seem nothing to many of you, but the first year they gave us $300,000 to do a program in a few schools and teach the kids we called quiet time. The results were so significant. Last year, they increased that to another $1 million. If you know education, that's a lot of money. The results were so significant. This year, the budget is for $2.6 million. And the preliminary indications are a significant reduction in arrests among meditating school kids during the summer months. This is major because it's the old school to prison pipeline. If a child is stressed and anxious, and we know our kids, the brains can't process 24, so much of what I'm talking about I've learned from Mehmet Oz, and his wife Lisa. But so the brain can't process this. And so now what we're doing is we're just giving them a tool they can learn so easily, no philosophy. The greatest thing about this is I'm a raging skeptic. And you can be 100% skeptical and do this. You say, I don't believe in gravity. So in the same way, this particular meditation, transcending, which just means settling down. I one time said transcendental meditation. The woman said, oh my God, what is transcendental meditation? Transcendental. First of all, it just means to transcend, which means to settle down. And she said, well, how do you know when your 20 minutes are up? And I said, look at your watch. We're not going anywhere, we're just settling down. So my goal is, and then I'm going to turn this back over to Katy, but I'm here because as a youngster, I worked for Bobby Kennedy. I wanted to be a United States Senator like Bobby Kennedy. I wanted to change the world.
You are.
I thought it was going to be through politics, but then I
This
realized...
is better.
It is. I realized politics was never going to heal the soul of the nation, and then I learned
It's
this...
not.
It's like a color commentary, you know. And he scored, and then Katy says he went around...
Duo.
Yeah. So I said, I learned to meditate. My first experience after learning this wasn't, oh, I want to get enlightened. My first experience was, I want to bring this to inner city school kids.
Yeah.
And that was June 29th, 28th, 1969. And I have been very fulfilled in now getting to the point where you can talk about meditation. I remember when my parents' friends would say, what's Bobby doing? When I was a kid, and they'd say, teaching meditation. And they say, what? Teaching meditation. And now here we are. Katy.
Well, I think it's wonderful, the call that you heard and then that you exercised the call. It's very admirable to be so dedicated to something in service of others. For me, I love young people. Honestly, if I didn't know how old I was, I'd probably be like maybe 21. I was 13 for a really long time.
I was thinking 6.
6? No, I'm definitely 7. I'm definitely conscious. I just love people in general, and I see them, I feel them. I'm a total empath, and I see how stressed they are by their devices, by their keeping up with appearances, wanting to, emulate what they see online, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. And I don't know if any of you guys have kids, but and me, I wake up and I grab this before I do anything most of the time. And to have this in your hand for, 12 to 13 hours out of the day and to always be continually on call, a lot of these kids don't remember what it's like to live a life without the internet, without posting. The 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds are like, we don't know what CDs are. I never thought I would say that. I'm sounding like my mother. You're right. After all this time. And I feel so much for them. And I know that meditation has been such an incredible tool to find that, I want to disconnect to connect back with myself. And I think it's really important to have that tool, to have that quiet time in these schools for these kids to be able to retain focus, which is at an all-time low, to be able to know themselves, to find their true authentic selves, which is being advertised to them in multitudes of ways, thousands of times a day. I really feel
of not their authentic self.
Of not their authentic self. There's a struggle. So anything we can do, and I find personally with my own experience, meditation is the key to really finding your true authentic self, finding that stillness, recharging, having the strength, the mental strength, the physical strength, the immune strength to be able to take on this big technological world.
2 years ago, the big...
Should we have a selfie?
Yeah. Okay.
I'm just kidding.
She does this on her shows. Then you can have pizza, serve pizza. I think you said something very interesting to me. You said, with regards to meditation, you said getting to the top was difficult, but staying at the top, really hard.
For meditation?
No, that meditation has helped you stay at the top.
Yeah, look, more money, more problems. That's what Jay said. But, I think that your problems don't go away once you have the spotlight and the success. They're just magnified under a very large microscope. And, I'm living my life, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity I get and the spotlight that I get to be able to share it. But I think that, I'm just being human because that's all I can be. And so I do make mistakes in front of the public, and I do feel like, you know, sometimes the kids get to learn through making my mistakes, through the different mess ups, and I admit to them, especially when I do admit to them. But I think that, I'm really grateful. It's a lot of attention, but God won't give me more than I can handle.
Your voice is very important. Did you know that, particularly with this issue now of opioid and substance abuse, did you know that there were more drug overdose deaths in the last 26 years, 787,548 in the last 26 years, than have died in all wars in America since including World War I. What are we doing to handle this absolute epidemic of trauma and stress, which is destroying our young lives? When in a toolbox, I think the point that I want to make, in a toolbox of life, we need to have at the basis for those of us, faith. But we need to eat well. We need to exercise properly. We need to love others. We need to serve others. But we need tools effortless, easy tool to access that field of stillness that's within every human being. That's not because I'm Jewish or Catholic or Muslim or atheist. That's the hypothesis. It's there. And when we experience that now, in this modern scientific age, we see this constellation of changes. You can go to tm.org and you can see the references to all the passing statements that I have, or a book that Dr. Norman Rosenthal wrote called Transcendence, or I wrote called Strength and Stillness, to show you the data. But for me, going back to the Bobby Kennedy years, one of the most inspiring people that I know is Ray Chambers, who many of you know. Ray Chambers has taught me, to think big. I want to teach, with Ray's inspiration, 1 million Syrian refugees to meditate.
Yes.
Why not? Ray wants to establish cities of peace. I should say the David Lynch Foundation is now an official NGO with the United Nations. And with Ray's inspiration, we want to set up cities of peace, countries of peace, 10,000 kids meditating in the favelas or nearby in Brazil, all over Latin America, all over Middle East, all over Africa, all over the United States. That study I told you about in Chicago, now we're going to repeat it with 4,000 kids in the Bronx, in Brooklyn, and New York. Going to bring it to Washington, D.C., where, with the gracious support of Jeffrey and Rona Abramson and the Abramson Center for Peace and the work of Steve Channon also. We have an office in a few blocks from the Capitol building where I'm now teaching. You're going to be grateful for this. Members of Congress on both sides of the aisle. Yeah. And we want to make this available. So I have final words for, any final words for Katy?
I'm just so blessed to be here. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for allowing me to be here, and for your attention. You know, I just want to be a messenger, and this is one of the greatest messages I was able to receive. And on a very basic level, on a very modern science level, for me, it's helped a lot with my anxiety. Instead of having to turn to prescription, I've been able to turn to this. It helps incredibly with jet lag. I mean, we did it this morning at 7 o'clock. And for all of the Italians, it helps with the hangovers. So.
And the final statement, I heard presented that, particularly with developing nations, that there's very little access to treatment in developing nations, and it's all about prevention.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, at-risk children are in some of the wealthiest schools in America. They're at risk. We all know that. Wouldn't it be wonderful to equip them with a tool? And there are other tools, and there's other meditations.
I meditate and then pray.
Perfect.
And it's a much better connection, I'll tell you what.
So thank you all very, very much. I appreciate for your
Thank
time.
you.